Welcome back here in the studio. We've had a couple of technical glitches, for example, in the main stage about 15-20 minutes ago. Fortunately, that affected only one stage, and now the session is on. It's on greener and fairer, how to rethink capitalism, with Mohamed Yunus, with Marie Pangestu from the World Bank, from Minister Bruno Le Maire, and so this is now running smoothly. It's not too astonishing that we would be having glitches, given the fact that on November 11 and 12, we had more than 50 hours of broadcast. We had almost 80 sessions, and we had more than 10,000 people following us on the platform and on YouTube and Facebook. And so, you know, on the one hand, we would prefer not to have them. On the other hand, considering the overall situation, we're not in too bad a place. And remember, you also have many other stages that you can watch if you're on the platform.
That is correct. So, you know, a lot is being spoken about during COVID crisis as to exacerbated inequalities, and one group that has been particularly hard hit have been women, and we have seen how this crisis has set back a lot of progress that we have hard fought for over the years with regards to pushing for women's economic participation within society. And you know, the data and statistics is truly fascinating. Women, when having access to economic opportunities, end up investing over 90% back into the economy. And most of the places where they invest the money back into is healthcare, education, resilient infrastructure, all of which we need to double down on during the COVID crisis. And men end up investing only upwards of 30% back into the economy. So logic tells you that this is something we need to double down on. And I am glad that Paris Peace Forum has a partnership with the Women's Forum for Economy and Society. And they will be hosting a session on Women at the Heart of Economy, Designing an Inclusive Recovery Program on Stage A. So that's one of the few sessions that you can catch. We also have many, many other stages talking about many other important topics.
And we have many partnerships, such as the one we have with the Women's Forum. As you know, for example, 2 days ago, we had a great session on the main stage because of our partnership with the Generation Equality Forum and many others that are sort of co-organized with other organizations.
You know, speaking of Generation Equality Forum, I found it particularly promising when Minister Elizabeth Moreno, who is leading the forum on behalf of the French administration, put forward a statement that said women must have guaranteed access to quality abortion as well as be able to make decisions about their body. And it was great to see the sort of coming together of France, Mexico, and UN Women to make these bold declarations when it comes to women's rights. So given this is a space for international diplomacy, and that we've been seeing how very polarized and political women's rights have become during this time, what is the role Paris Peace Forum hopes to play? I have particularly strong thoughts about this, as you all know. But what is the role that Paris Peace Forum hopes to play to drive the agenda forward when it comes to equality?
You know, it's a decision that the executive committee of the forum, and helped by the steering committee, which you're presiding over, Trisha, will have to make. But certainly this has been a concern of ours since the beginning. As you know, we have 6 large themes. One of them is inclusive economy, one of them is development, and at the intersection of these two, we have been pushing not only sessions and debates on this, but also concrete projects.
And maybe just give a quick word to the audience and attendees watching as to how, what is the thinking, values, ethics that designs the functionings of Paris Peace Forum? Because, you know, we get a lot of emails being from the steering committee as to does this work? We're looking at, you know, addressing this topic. What is the consensus? So maybe you want to give the audience a sort of insight as to the workings that lead to the 3 days?
Yes, absolutely. Well, there are mostly 2 bodies that we are working on these 3 days and on the editorial line of the forum. One is the steering committee made up of 16 personalities, and of which Trisha is the president. 16 personalities from around the world. These are persons. And then the executive committee, which decides on the overall shape of the program and the topics that we decide to pick, because we cannot address everything, even though, and sometimes people are criticizing that choice, we are treating many different issues, perhaps too many. So the executive committee decides on the exact editorial shape of the forum, and this one is made up of 10 organizations, 5 from the north, 5 from the global south, from Mexico, from Africa, and elsewhere, that you have seen probably during the video on the logos, and that decide on the overall shape of it, and also on the, what the shape of the projects and the scope should be.
So we don't just slap on partner logos for their logos, we actually get them involved in all the processes.
Absolutely, they decide.
Okay, great. So you see it's a democratic process, and with that, we will leave you to discover the rest of the stages and all the topics of conversation that will be happening now at the forum.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for all of us joining us. First, let me say a great congratulations to the Peace Forum and the huge success they are experiences. And thank you to Tricia and Justin for your nice introduction. We are very excited at the Women's Forum to be partner, because when we talk about peace, when you talk about recovery, when you talk about the future of the world that we want to design together, you cannot imagine without women leadership. Then I'm very happy to be with you today in this special session of the Women's Forum World Economy Society, where we want to put the woman at the heart of science, at the heart of the economy, and designing an inclusive world. Because, as you know, we are experiencing a disrupted world. Most practices and professions are being invented and reinvented each day. Where are women? It's more and more than imperative that women, who contribute up only to 34% of the worldwide wealth creation, have access to the jobs of the future, those who give the key success to the transformation of the world. It's what we're doing at the Women's Forum. As you know, we are a strong platform able to sensibilize the head of state and government, to sensibilize the public and private decision makers, to act, to launch initiatives. And I'm very, very proud that we can be linked with you, Peace Forum, to give visibility and the need of women whenever we can bring our contribution and added value to the humanity. And I'm therefore particularly delighted because it's urgent to value the contribution of science. There is a momentum now. How do we keep this momentum high? And who best than Fabiola Giannotti? Dear Fabiola, I'm so privileged to welcome you. I'm so privileged because you are an outstanding scientist, an outstanding leader, and of course, an outstanding woman. In this challenging time, it's a very important opportunity to search for cooperative solutions, address our global challenges, and see how we can collectively, with you, with those kind of people you are representing, overcome and find a response to this sanitary, economic, and social crisis. Fabiola, we need hope, we need determination, we need courage, and of course science to build a more sustainable world. To fully include women where they can bring their positive contribution, not in opposition with men, of course, but our positive contribution to a she recovery. It's what we invented at the Women's Forum. And who better than you, Fabiola, a great scientist, a great leader to guide us and to inspire us. You have always been a pioneer, the first woman at the head of the CERN in Geneva. You have been recently confirmed. Congratulations for the second mandate as a Director General. It has never been happened before you. You did it. With a PhD in experimental particle physics from the University of Maryland, all your life you have been major contribution to crucial issues such as the development of the detectors and the data analysis strategies for the search of the Higgs boson, best known for us as the God particle. We know it has been extremely difficult to detect a particle. It took nearly half a century and $1 multi-billion to do it. And it was you, Fabiola, who announced the discovery of the Higgs boson in 2012. You're involved in a number of high-level committees. You're recognized worldwide as a scientist, as a creator. And you've even been asked by Pope Francis to be part of his task force, along with many Nobel Prizes. Then what I would like to see with you, it's how you can bring us your vision, your contribution to say what we have to do now. What are the major success stories and milestones? What have you achieved, especially in high energy physics? What are the main challenges in the years to come? And please explain us also what and why this high energy physics is so useful for all of us. Fabiola, the floor is yours, and thank you again for being with us.
Thank you, Chiara. Thank you so much for the invitation and this very nice dialogue. And thank you also for your very kind and very nice words. So to answer your question, first of all, what is the impact and importance of high energy physics? So high energy physics or particle physics at accelerators is the most fundamental of all sciences because it studies the smallest constituents of matter that cannot be cut into smaller pieces. That's why they are called elementary particles, and the smallest constituents of the universe. And over the past decades, particle physics has managed to discover many of the existing particles, not all of them, so there is still a lot to do, and to study in great detail their properties and their interaction. And this has given us very strong insight into the structure and the evolution of the universe. The science that we do at CERN allows us to go back to times corresponding to 1/1,000,000 of a second after the Big Bang, the big explosions that gave origin to our universe. And in particular, the discovery of the Higgs boson is a very important one because this particle is very special and also in some sense related to our own existence, because without the Higgs boson, atoms of which we are all made, the matter we are all made, the matter that we see around us, all the objects that surround us, are made of atoms, and atoms will not exist as bound states, as stable states, without the Higgs boson. Now, to address your second question about the importance of what we do for society, well, first of all, what we are doing is to push back the limit of knowledge. And every time we make a step forward in knowledge, sooner or later, this will have an impact also, a practical impact on society. In the case of fundamental research, very often this impact does not come on the short term, but on the longer term. I give you an example. When Sir J.J. Thomson discovered the electron at the end of the 19th century, he could not have imagined the reach of his discovery. Electronics is based on electrons. Today, we could not live without the knowledge of how an electron behaves and the practical application of electrons. The second impact that particle physics has on society is that our scientific goals are very ambitious because we have to study these tiny particles, and to do so, we need enormous accelerators. The Large Hadron Collider that we run today at CERN is a 27-kilometer underground ring filled with technologies. And we need to build very ambitious and complex particle detectors and computing infrastructure. And so we need to develop cutting-edge technologies in several fields. from electronics to big data, from superconducting magnets to vacuum and cryogenic technologies, which are transferred for free to society and have a huge impact on our life. Of course, the most famous example is the World Wide Web, which was developed by Sir Tim Berners-Lee at CERN in 1989 when he was a CERN employee. And of course, it had an enormous impact on the way society accesses information. But technologies developed at CERN finds application in medicine, in cancer treatment, in imaging, in diagnostic. So what we do has clearly also an immediate impact on society.
Yes, Fabiola, thank you so much. You already answered my second question, because what is very important for us to understand that, something science seems so far away, so complicated. And by the way, you explain difficult things, complex things in easy word to understand for each of us, then thank you so much, because, the world is watching this panel. But maybe I would just like to insist on how is this particle physics so important for peace, because we are in the Peace Forum, and also to sustain the value of our society. What are the benefits all the day? I mean, including maybe in medical issues, or what are we experience? Because we know that your contribution, it's precious, but maybe you have to tell us in a concrete way what it changed on a daily life for us.
Yes.
I know that's a very difficult question, because what we want is to put science at the level of each of us to understand the importance in a daily basis, again, on what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chiara, for this additional question that allows me to go into more detail. So let me give you examples of the technologies that we develop at CERN that have changed the world. I mentioned the World Wide Web, which was developed in 1989 here and was made available in 1993 for humanity and for free. So available to everyone to develop and to use. I mentioned that the application in the medical field, one very good example is what we call today hadron therapy. It's a therapy that allows to treat cancer in a way complementary to the usual radiation therapy. Radiation therapy is based on X-rays. X-rays are very useful, but they have the negative side effect that they spread all over the places. So when you want to bombard a tumor tissue with X-rays, actually you bombard not only the tissue, but the tumor, but also the surrounding tissue. On the other hand, if you use other beams of protons or beams of light ions like carbon ions, those beams are much more focused. So if you really shoot at the tumor, you just hit the tumor and destroy it without touching the surrounding healthy tissue. And so these therapies are indicated, for instance, when you want to treat kids, because you don't want to bombard kids with a lot of radiations, or for tumors which are localized very close to very important organs. And now the accelerator technologies that are used to accelerate and focus these beams have been developed at CERN. There are many other examples, for instance, using accelerator for the study of historical relics or paintings. Recently, a painting that was not fully attributed to Raphael, but to its school, actually has been really verified to be having been the work of the great master, the great painter, using technologies developed at CERN. And so on and so forth. You also mentioned peace, and let me say something about peace. CERN attracts something like 18,000 scientists from all over the world. More than 110 nationalities are represented. Some of these scientists come also from countries in conflict. So here we have scientists from Iran working together with scientists from Israel. We have scientists from Palestine working together with scientists from Israel. And so they work together animated by the same passions for science. I can tell you a nice story that actually touched me very much. In the summer, usually at CERN, except this summer because of COVID, we run a summer student programs where we welcome at CERN something like 300 undergrad students from all over the world. And a few years ago, I saw on a wall of CERN a very nice announcement inviting all the summer students to participate to a party jointly organized by the Israeli and Palestinian students. So, of course, these things are not going to change the world, but these are little seed pieces that we can implant. Yes, of course, not on a big scale. They're not, of course, what I mean, are not going to solve geopolitical conflicts, okay? But they are little seed of peace that we plant and that, of course, in the long term can contribute to changing the world.
Fabiola, I think that when you're talking about Palestinian and Israeli working together and Iranian and Israeli working together, we are really talking to make the world better and it's peace. Do you still have at the entry of the CERN working for peace?
Yeah, well, it's science. Actually, CERN was a bit founded with the motto "Science for Peace," because it was already understood by our founding fathers, and CERN was founded in 1953, 1950, 54 by some visionary politicians and scientists with two goals. And I would like to underline that 1953, 1954 was just after Second World II. So Europe was out of a big crisis. And those visionary politicians and scientists decided to found CERN with two purposes. Purpose number one, to bring back to Europe excellence in scientific research after the period of the years of the war, where many scientists had emigrated in the US, Russia, and to other countries and continents. So already the understanding that the social and economical renaissance also goes through science and research. And goal number two was to foster peaceful collaboration among European countries after the divides and the fights of the war. So understanding that science is a glue that can bring people and nations together. And today CERN also is actually going beyond this initial goal, because we bring together people from all over the world, not just Europe, but is still promoting this specific mission of science for peace.
Thank you. Great project. Fabiola, I know that you don't like compliments, that you're a woman of science, you are a woman of Descartes following, but I would like to hear you, because you're also a great leader, not only a great scientist. You just was mentioning that you have 18,000 people in CERN that you manage on a daily basis, and you are recognized not only as a leader of organization of excellence, but also as a leader. Then how you deal, what is the kind of leader of you? Do you have a feminine way of leading? Do you have something that's a Fabiola way of leading? Can you tell us more about it?
So first of all, Chiara, let me say...
I'm sure it is, but we really would like you to share your vision on that.
Okay, so first of all, in general, Chiara, and then I will come to the more personal aspect. In general, the key word at CERN is teamwork. We all work together, these 18,000 people from all over the world, because, first of all, we all work together because we are all pushed by the same passion of understanding how things work. And this is a very strong glue, is a very strong driver. But also because we are aware that our very scientific, very ambitious scientific goals and our very complex instruments could not be built just by a handful of individuals, not even by a single country. It really requires bringing together people from across the world, the brains of the planet, and the physicists, engineers, technicians, administrative personnel who can really participate and contribute to this great endeavor. So we all have a role to play, and all roles are equally important. I am now the director of the lab, but I'm not more important than people who are, working underground in the tunnel, building magnets or testing the high-tech infrastructure that we have. So we all have a role to play, and we have this awareness that our strength is really our diversity and the fact that we work together. On a more personal level, because I'm a great believer of this teamwork spirit, I grew up here at CERN and in this culture, and it's part of my being, and it's part of my what I think and how I think humanity should work. My style of leading is quite collegial, so I discuss with people, of course. I consult with my collaborator, of course. At some point when it comes to taking a decision and there are different opinions, I have to take the responsibility for the decision. But my way of leading is really also recognizing the value and the work of each individual collaborator, in each individual person involved in the CERN activities.
Thank you. I bet anyway, I'm convinced that you have a special way to lead as a woman, and I don't think it's easy to combine your research work as a scientist as a manager, because both of them sometimes it's not exactly the same format.
Absolutely.
And I talk with some of your team. I think they are really very, very proud to have you as your leader. And Fabiola, because you talk about personal things, you cannot imagine that as the leader of the Women's Forum for Economy and Society, and being in a panel co-organized with the Women's Forum, you cannot imagine that they won't ask you some specific question about the women leadership. Because of your achievements, you're such a model, a role model, but not a reference, but not only for women in science and beyond. And your name makes dream. Your names say there are possibilities. And this is really something that I heard many times. And I can tell you that I had the opportunity and the chance to bring my contribution as Women's Forum in the task force where we were active, organized by Minister Elena Bonetti, the Minister of Gender Equality and Family in Italy. There was a special task force in Italy called 10 Women for the Renaissance. By the way, I think it's a very nice idea to put the human being at the heart of the recovery and the Renaissance of Italy. And I saw not only how much you were inspiring, but something that really touched me, it's how you give back to the community. How much you're involved. You have an agenda 24 hours a day. I know that you're modest and you don't want compliments, but I have really been impressed how much you were there. You gave your contribution. You were committed. And this, I think it's so important because, as you know, you are very precious for us as the Women's Forum, because as you know, one of the main issues that we have, it's how to attract girls and women in the work and the jobs of the future. There where we can, again, transform the world, be there to be decision maker in climate, in AI, in where the world is going to be transformed. And women are only 24%. How can you explain that still now we are not attractive enough to girls and women? What is your opinion? What is your experience? How you can analyze this situation? Why we are still only 24% in STEM worldwide?
Yeah, thank you, Chiara, for this opportunity also to touch on this very important theme. Well, I think there are two kinds of reasons. I think first of all, at the level of roots, that is, at the level of the young people. I think that today there are still too many prejudices, perhaps at the level already of families, at the level of teachers, at the primary, secondary school, that science or STEM activities or science, technology, engineering, mathematics are not something good for women. I heard this several times, even recently. So we have to attract more girls to science by, in particular, showing to the girls and also to the boys, to everyone, how science and STEM studies will allow them to play an important role in addressing some of the most pressing challenges today. Climate change, environment, energy supplies. These are things that you can address, that we should address also from the point of view of science. And if you are a good scientist, then you will be able to help this very societal. So sometimes there is the perception that the scientist is someone close in his or her ivory tower, completely decoupled from reality. And this is not the case. Scientists are really citizens, very much anchored to the problems of society. So this is one thing. The other thing, of course, is the usual problem of the careers, women careers. And it's very important to, to monitor the careers of women, to make sure that in the selection committees for women, people do not have unconscious biases. So also training of board and committees members to make sure that they are open and inclusive toward women, toward minorities in terms of ethnicity and other minorities. So monitoring the careers, making sure that women have really also adequate representatives in high-level boards, in academic institutions, in research institutions, in public, private sectors. These are all things where we have to do better.
Thank you so much, Fabiola. And as the Women's Forum, we launched a STEM Key program to attract and all lifelong young girls and women since school until the boards. And what you say is very important. What we recommended to the G7 leaders in a special letter, it's to prepare a place for the girls and women who embrace this career, to prepare the pipeline, to give them a special place in the executive committee, 30% from now to 2030. That means that we will that 30% of the women in the COMEX, especially in Europe or G7 countries, are coming from STEM career, STEM education. And absolutely. In the boards, it's even more important. In France, we have a quota of 40% that worked very well because now they were champions in the world with 45% of women in boards. Italy, it's the second one worldwide. We had quotas. We would like to install quotas with at least 30% of women in the boards coming from STEM career, because we are considering that they will have the capacity to take the decisions. They will be those who will decide in climate, will decide again in technical issues. And now the decisions are taken by those who knows. And I will come back to the second question, to the last question, that it's maybe the most important one in my mind. We saw that science, it's at spotlight, it's at the center. The pandemic revealed how much we need competences, how much we need expertise, how much we need to know where we're going. And how in this context has the perception of science changed, including for the particle physics. But I would also highlight something that's a very good news. Until 1 month ago, we had only 19 women in science awarded by the Nobel Prize among the 110 Nobel Prize in Science since the beginning in the early 19th. Now we have 2 more. This year, women have been recognized in science and awarded, highly awarded. Do you think, Fabiola, that the perception of science is evolving? And what is the role again? How we can ensure that people understand it's not because of a crisis that science is essential? And allow me also to say, and what is the role of women in science? Can we really make the difference? A complex question.
Yeah,
ambitious question, but I'm sure that you will answer on that.
Okay, so let me start by perhaps underlining the role of science for a sustainable future for humanity and for the planet. We are in the middle of a crisis. I hope we will be soon out of the crisis. And as you mentioned, Chiara, the crisis has brought science to the front stage because, of course, it's a health crisis, and so of course many governments avail themselves also of the opinion of
not only health. I mean, there was a way of thinking the importance of science. Sorry for interrupting you. You see, there was really
no, absolutely no. But I wanted to mention is, yes, but what I wanted to mention that particularly in this moment with the health crisis, governments first of all are also asking the opinion of panels, which include scientists. Before the crisis, perhaps, I don't know how many governments had advisory bodies, including scientists. I'm not so sure. Many virtuous governments, maybe, but not all of them. But also, you know, the public listen to virologists, epidemiologists, immunologists every day. We see them, you know, on the media. They become very, very famous, more famous than politicians and actors. Okay, which is good, which is absolutely good. But this should continue also in the future. Should not be just a one-off because we have a crisis. Then, of course, there is a crisis. We call the scientists, they help us, and then we put science back into its box, and then we take it out again at the next crisis. Because science is one of the best tools we have to avoid crises as much as we can. If we cannot avoid them, at least to address them in a prepared and in the best possible way. Had we invested more resources in medical and other research in the past, perhaps we will not be today in this situation. So why science is an indispensable tool as we move forward out of the crisis and in the future? I think it's for three reasons. The first reason is that science brings us knowledge, and knowledge is the fuel of progress. Without innovation, without ideas, without breakthroughs, progress at some point stops. And let me say that also in particular, history shows that very often breakthroughs come from fundamental research, because it's the one that is more imaginative, the one that is less constrained by delivering a product in the short term, is the one that allows you to think out of the box. So the blue sky research. Think of an example that I usually give also because it's very relevant to today's crisis, is quantum mechanics. When it was developed and at the beginning of the last century, it was considered to be useless knowledge because so far away from any practical application. And this was true in the short term. But in the long term, we know that modern electronics will not exist without quantum mechanics, without the knowledge of quantum mechanics. And even the electron microscope that we use today to study the virus will not be there. So really, fundamental research can have a disruptive impact on society. So knowledge, science brings us knowledge, and that's is an important capital for the future of humanity. The point number two is what we were discussing before. Science is a very powerful tool for connecting people. Today we face global challenges. Global challenges require global answers. Global answer means working together. And science can show the way, because science is by definition universal. It's based on facts. The laws of nature are the same everywhere on Earth. But science also is a common aspiration shared by humanity, because the thirst for understanding how things work, this is something that transcends passports, transcends religious belief or ethnicity or any other or culture. And then the third very important point is that science available to all and education accessible to all. So when we talk about open science and open education, is one of the most powerful tools we have today to reduce the inequities across the world. Every time there is a crisis, inequities increase. The gap between gender gap, for instance, the gap between developed countries and developing countries, the gap between the rich and the poor, they usually increase, they do not shrink. And knowledge and education are among the most powerful, empowering tools that we can give to people. So that's why it's very important that we continue to keep science on the center stage, moving out of the crisis.
Yes,
and you asked something else, but I forgot. Yeah.
Injustice, and we're talking about injustice, of course. We cannot ignore the injustice, the gap between man and woman, of course. Yes. And I just wanted to say something that impressed me a lot. When we do our polls and we ask girls what they want to do in their career, from 10 to 15 years old, 72% say, I want to have a social positive impact. I want to work for purpose. And I think that you see science, it's exactly the tool that gives them the possibility to work for purpose, to be useful, to bring a contribution, a positive contribution to the society. And this is something that we need to highlight the most as we can, and to give an invite to common science like that. They can be there to discover the vaccine, to replace the robot who will, to invent a robot who will replace the nurse, and so on and so forth. But this is something that's really a lot of work to do. And I just been told that we have just a few minutes to finish, but I will just announce you all that we have a chance, because Fabiola will continue to highlight us with your inspiration and your guidelines next week during the Women's Forum, because this Women's Forum and the Peace Forum give us the possibility to make a bridge between this outstanding forum on peace with head of state and government, and with strong messages, including on the recovery, a very strong one, and the Women's Forum for the Economy and Society that will be held next week on the 17th, 18th, and 19th, on a very, very important issue: how behind the recovery we can design an inclusive world. We have an opportunity, a unique opportunity, to invent a new system in health, in climate, in business, in AI, in the work of the future, in topics that are not gender topics, but where we women, who are much more impacted on those issues than men, can bring a paramount contribution. And we call it this she-covery. You know, it has been a Marshall Plan. We would like to have a she Marshall Plan for the recovery. Not because women are better or worse, of course not. It's not that. We're not in a position, but it's only if we do it together with private sector, the great men who take decision in economic sectors, and the public sector, the great decision man in the private sector. We have this opportunity, and we have to be sure that women are fully involved in the recovery, in the relaunch plans, not only benefiting from them, but designing them, saying what are our needs, what is our view and vision of the society that we want to create. And again, not only on gender issues, but on crucial issues for all of us. And as you know, you just reminded before, Fabiola, it's not just a question of justice, of dignity, of equity. It's a question of economic growth. It's a question of performance. It's a question of creativity, of attractiveness, of creating those words. And of course, of economic performance. You all know 240 million jobs can be created from now to 2025 in just 5 years, if there were more women in the economy. And we could add $28 trillion to the world GDP if women and men are equally represented. Then you see, we cannot miss this opportunity. We cannot. And I thank you so much, Fabiola, because you put it in the right image. Women at the heart of the economy, women at the heart of the society cannot be without women in science also. Because with Women IQ, Fabiola, and I will give you the word of the end, we are so happy to welcome again next week, because with women such as you involved in the scientific innovation, creating the world that we dream on, we know that it will benefit to the whole humanity, and you give us faith in the future. Thank you so much, and I leave you conclude, and see you. Looking forward to see you next week, and thank you so much for your time, because it's so precious. And a heartfelt thank you for being with us.
Thank you,
Fabiola,
Chiara.
the floor is yours.
To you. Yes, thank you very much, Chiara, for this very nice interview and for giving me the floor. Let me just conclude by saying that diversity in all its facets, gender, ethnicity, age, is the strongest asset, perhaps, of humanity. And so we cannot afford, for instance, not to use 50% of the world population, women, in the best possible way. This is not really conceivable for a sustainable and equitable society. So, so I hope that we will make progress on that in the future. Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you so much. Thank you.